Commissioner Broussard is delayed getting on the call as well. But everybody, I think, else is here. If you want to wait a minute, are we live?
Are we on YouTube yet?
It is going live right now. It'll pop up there in just a second.
Thank you. Just let us know.
This isn't good, Dick. Quit rubbing them eyes.
Itch already.
Going live right now. It's live.
I'm checking public comment currently, commissioners, to make sure we don't have any additional comments that have come in this morning, and we have none.
Will they be able to send them in as we're in the process here, Charlie?
They can email public comment through the WPMC website. We can also accept public comment via fax, text messages, whatever. So.
Okay.
And we do have several people that have signed up this morning to participate in the public comment. And when we get to those agenda items, we will pull them in. So it's up to you, sir. If you want to start, it's 9:03. We can do a quick roll call.
All right. Let's go ahead and get her underway then at 9:03 this morning, February 19th.
Thank you, President Davis. President Davis is here. Vice President Broussard. Vice President Broussard is absent. Commissioner Glick. Danny Glick is absent at this time. Commissioner Daigle.
Here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Commissioner Barry. Commissioner Barry is absent. Commissioner Lynan.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Cura.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Pacheco.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Wildcat.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum, President Davis. Also, we have our legislative liaison, Senator Driscoll. Have you joined the call? He is absent. Representative Walters, good morning, sir. I see you. Thank you.
Good morning, Director Moore. I see Senator Driscoll just joined.
Oh,
Thank
there
you.
he is. Yes.
It put me on as a guest, wouldn't let me on, so I'm here. Thank you. I should be a guest, but
Well, I apologize. Looks like you've got your beach shirt on this morning.
I might not be dressed appropriately. I'll turn my video off.
No. And then we have our governor's liaison, Dan Schiffers, on the call, I believe.
Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
Dan?
President Davis, would you like to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, I would like that. Everybody ready? I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag
to the flag
of the
of
United
the
States
United
of
States
America and to the
of the
republic
Republic
for which
for which it
it
stands,
nation
one
under God, indivisible,
visible,
liberty
with
and
liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
We
Okay,
also have on the call, Senator Ellis is on the call. Thank you and welcome. We also have on the call this morning joining us here, Mike Kaler from the Attorney General's Office, Senior Assistant Attorney General. Did I miss anyone else? I think that's everybody. I do have commission staff that are joining us via the YouTube link, not on the call. I have Mr. Laramende handling the the connectivity for the meeting. I would just like to take a moment here, President Davis, and welcome everyone to the February 19th, 2021 special meeting of the Wyoming Gaming Commission. My name is Charles Moore, Executive Director of the Wyoming Gaming Commission. Along with the commissioners, as I said, we have staff joining us on YouTube, and additionally, we have Mr. Kaler joining us as customary, Assistant Attorney General's office. Have several individuals which have signed up to provide public comment. Please be aware of the mute and raise your hand feature on the screen. Additionally, you may raise your hand and the president will make every effort to acknowledge you and allow a person to participate. We will be monitoring the raise your hand features from multiple places here in our office. So be patient with us so we can get everybody in, get their comments heard, and also when the public is on the call, allowing them and affording them the opportunity. We do have, as I stated, we have Senator Ellis that would like to give us a brief update on Senate File Substitute Bill 56 at some point. So we will schedule that in. And all participants, please be reminded that we are airing the meeting via YouTube. Excuse me, I'm getting a text message from Dr. Barry. Nick, can you make sure that Dr. Barry gets pulled into the call? He is saying in a text message he is on there, but he doesn't have a participant ID, so he cannot hear us. Can you check that for him, please?
Yes, sir. Is he called in?
I'm not sure. Yeah, he just acknowledged he is. There he is, I think. Dr. Barry, is that you connected now?
He'll have to unmute himself, but that should be him.
Don't we all love technology this morning? I'll continue on here, commissioners, as we get everybody connected. All participants, again, like I said, please be aware that we are aired live on YouTube and be aware of that. The Commission's mission, the primary mission of the Wyoming Gaming Commission is the protection of the wagering public and the health, safety, and welfare of the participants in all lawful gaming and pari-mutuel activity. All meetings of the governing body of the agency are public meetings open to the public except as otherwise provided pursuant to Wyoming Statute 1603A. As you all know, this meeting is being held remotely due to COVID-19 restrictions. To watch the meeting live, there is a live video stream available to the public in the YouTube link, which is provided in the official notice and also on the Commission's website. The Wyoming Gaming Commission will allow comments to be submitted in several forms: in person, via email, phone, or fax. Participants can sign up to provide live public comment for a specific agenda item, and please fill out the form that was provided on the agenda. And also it's on the website, and we'll get you a Zoom invite from the Gaming Commission office. Commission may open an executive session pursuant to Wyoming Statutes 164405A. Additionally, inclusion on the agenda does not necessarily constitute a commission action. Again, public participation. We do appreciate public comment, and we'll accept those prior to the meeting, and the commission staff will continue to monitor those avenues during the meeting and make every effort to transmit additional comments to the commissioners. Thank you and welcome to the meeting, everyone.
All right, Charlie, thank you. At this time, we would be going to item number 2, commissioners, the agenda. Discussion, consideration, and possible action on the following matters. Okay? So I would be looking for a motion, but at this time I'd like to add something to the agenda, which would be an update from Senator Ellis on Senate File 56 after, as we go on here. So we would be looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
President Davis, this is Commissioner Lynan. I move that we accept the agenda as amended.
Okay, is there, thank you, Sherry. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried, Charlie. Item number 3, approval of minutes from the.
President Davis, if I can jump in here real quickly. We do have an additional person that is on the call. And Dr. Barry is trying to still get into the call. I do see a 307-620-0892 that's on the call. If they could identify themselves, if that's a commissioner or someone, please unmute yourself.
Hey, Charlie, do you see me? This is Troy.
Yes.
Troy's on.
Can't get video, but I'm.
Okay. The 307-620-0892 is Dr. Barry, and he is still trying to get in. And if Nick, I don't know if he's texting me. I don't know if you want to get my telephone and try to get with him, or if you can reach him.
I'll see if I can reach him. He's in, he just has to unmute his phone.
Charlie, is Troy in or is he just muted?
Yes, I would like for the record to reflect that Troy Broussard has joined the call, and he has raised his hand. I see that.
We don't see his picture.
That's correct. We also have Dr. Barry on the call, but he is still having connectivity issues.
Well, should we take a few minutes here and see if we can't get our technology lined out before we can proceed?
Go to. It says on video.
Charlie, I think I'm in.
Oh, looks like we've got Dr. Barry unmuted now. Dr. Barry, are you there?
I am.
Welcome aboard.
So we have Dr. Barry on the call now.
So we're just waiting for Troy to show up, or is just Troy on a phone?
Troy is on the call.
Yeah, Bob, I'm on the. I can see all of y'all. I just can't see video of myself for some reason.
Well, that's convenient. Okay.
What I would like to do, President Davis, if you don't mind, let's go through a real quick roll call of the commissioners so we have that on the record. President Davis.
Here.
Thank you. Vice President Broussard.
Oh, he's not going to talk.
He's on there, Bob. Thank you. Commissioner Glick has not joined yet. Commissioner Daigle.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Barry.
Here.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Lynan.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Kura. He's there. Commissioner Pacheco. I see Dwayne. Thank you, sir. And Commissioner Wildcat. Thank you. We can, President Davis, we could move on to item number 3 if you'd like now.
Okay, Charlie, at this time, let's go to item number 3, the approval of the minutes from January 22nd special meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review these?
Yes.
Are there any corrections or additions?
President Davis,
Yes, Sherry.
I'd like to move adoption of the January 22nd meeting minutes as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
President Davis, I second.
Thank you, Randy. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. This time, Charlie, We'll go to item number 4, rule petition. Discussion, consideration, and possible action on the following matter. A request received January 20th from 307 Horse Racing to amend Chapter 10, Section 6K. Would be looking for a motion to go into discussion here.
Pricing, do you know?
Let me grab my computer.
Do we have a motion to go into discussion?
I make a motion to
President-
go into discussion.
Is that
Thank you, Commissioner Wildcat.
Jenny?
I-
Thank you. Second by Dick.
Correct.
All in favor, aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Okay, at this time, Charlie, I believe we would like to hear from 307.
Yes, we need to start moving everyone over into the call.
Okay,
Nick, if you would do that, please.
they are the petitioner, is that correct?
And what I'll do, President Davis, is just run down through some of the items that we have here first, and then
Okay,
what I can do is everybody's slowly moving in. We can start on this and they can hear us. Item number 4, rule petition. A request received January 20th from 307 Horse Racing to amend Chapter 10, Section 6K. We do have in your packet, commissioners, we do have the map, and Nick, if you could put the map up on the screen at some point for us. 100-mile radiuses of the racetracks. We've got that for you, commissioners. It's also in your packets. The map that we've got up here now shows 100-mile radius is between the camplex in the back, the upper right. If you go down to the lower left, you'll see the 100-mile radius from Wyoming Downs, and then move over to the 100-mile radius around Sweetwater. So that gives everybody an idea what we're talking about within 100 miles of the racetrack. So Nick, you can go back to the other, just go back to our regular normal screen. In your packets in the public, we have 7 exhibits there for you. Exhibit number 1 is the rule petition packet. Exhibit number 2 is a letter of support from the Camplex. Exhibit number 3 is a letter of opposition. Exhibit number 4 is another letter of opposition. Exhibit number 5 is the December 9th, 2020 Wyoming Attorney General's response letter to 307 Horse Racing when they had the initial request and looking into amending the rule. Exhibit number 6 is the January 2nd, 2015 Wyoming Attorney General's informal opinion on the 100-mile rule and our current interpretation. Exhibit number 7 then is a just general, the statutes that do apply. There is a correction in those. I had there that I used the wrong citation on the very bottom of that list, and I apologize for that. Additionally, we did receive a few public comments in response of this rule petition, and I was asked to mention that today, and I'll do that right now as well. I received public comment via email last week from George Spiva from the Wyoming All Breeds Racing Association. He is representing the association from what he said to me in the email, and he was in opposition of 307 Horse Racing's request. I think at this point, President Davis, I can turn it over for 307 to present the request.
I believe that would be appropriate at this time, Charlie.
Thank you.
President Davis, Wyoming Gaming Commissioners, Director Moore, thank you for your time and consideration of 307 Horse Racing's petition to amend Chapter 10, Section 6K of the Wyoming Pari-Mutuel Commission rules and the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Tyler Garrett, and I'm an attorney with Hathaway & Coons, and we are assisting 307 Horse Racing on the legal side of things with their goal to provide live horse racing here in Wyoming. Now, 307 Horse Racing is so excited to be part of Wyoming's horse racing industry and looks forward to continuing to work with you all and the other operators in taking live horse racing to the next level in the state. And we very much appreciate and respect your time in considering the petition. And our goal today is to be as efficient as possible to provide any additional information the commission may need to make an informed decision on the 100-mile simulcasting rule. And I'll lead things off and briefly discuss a few points to provide clarity and context regarding 307 Horse Racing's petition and the legal analysis set forth therein. I will then hand the reins over to Jack Greer so he can provide a bit of background into 307 Horse Racing's efforts and the importance of the commission to effectively apply the applicable 100-mile simulcasting prohibition in order for live horse racing to thrive as the legislature intended. And after Jack provides his information, Governor Mead will conclude by sharing his insight on laws surrounding live horse racing based on his experience. And we'd also request that after public comment, we have an opportunity to briefly reply at the end of this meeting. And I'd like to begin by discussing how we got here today and why 307 Horse Racing submitted a petition to amend the 100-mile rule. When 307 Horse Racing began its due diligence into the viability of becoming the third live horse racing operator here in Wyoming, it was unclear how the 100-mile simulcasting prohibition was being applied by the commission. So as a result, we worked with the commission throughout the permit application process, seeking the commission's guidance in May of 2020, and then submitting a legal analysis to the commission in November. And in response to our legal analysis that was submitted, we really appreciated Mr. Kaler's letter providing the Attorney General and Gaming Commission's current interpretation of the 100-mile statute and related rule. And 307 Horse Racing's legal team, along with an industry expert, then continued to research and analyze the applicable statutes and related rule. However, after conducting further legal analysis, we can continue to arrive at only one unavoidable legal conclusion, and that is the plain language of Section 1125-102A7C prohibits simulcasting from being conducted on an annual basis within 100 miles of any permitted premises, and a permitted premises being a horse racetrack that conducts a 16 live race meet during a calendar year for which it has been licensed by this commission. And based on our legal analysis, 307 Horse Racing felt it was prudent to submit a petition to amend the rule and provide additional analyses in order for the commission to make a fully informed decision as to whether the rule needs to be amended so that it clearly is applied in conformance with the statute, or at the very least to reassess its current interpretation of the statute and the rule. And so for purposes of our discussion today, I think it's important to reaffirm that the term permitted premises as set forth in Section 1125-102A7C refers to the location from which to measure the 100-mile distance, not a timed event. Again, when permitted premises is correctly interpreted to be a racetrack where a 16-day live race meet is conducted, and that designation is for the calendar year for which it has been licensed by the commission, then the statute and rule can be fairly applied to support horse racetrack operators as the legislature intended. So accordingly, because Wyoming Downs will run a 16-day live meet in 2021 at its track in Revinston, it therefore has 100-mile simulcasting protection around its track for the year to sustain the substantial costs incurred for those live horse racing events. And similarly, because Wyoming Horse Racing will run the 16-day live race meet in 2021 at its track in Rock Springs, it too will have 100-mile protection around its track for the year as well. And the same would be true for 307 Horse Racing. Because it will run a 16-day live race meet in 2021 at its track in Gillette, it therefore has 100-mile simulcasting protection around its permitted premises for the year. And with that clear baseline understanding of 1125-102A7C, the operators can then effectively negotiate waivers accordingly that balance the sustainability in those respective locations. Now, simulcasting outside of those 100-mile locations is, of course, open for all operators, although the other two operators already have a stronghold on the simulcasting market, which leads to an additional aspect of how our correct interpretation promotes live horse racing. And that is it incentivizes operators to expand live horse racing into other Wyoming communities. So let me provide a hypothetical. If another operator has been consistently capitalizing on its OTB sites in Cheyenne over the past several years, they may wish to make the business decision to invest in another track there, perhaps at the Archer Complex or CFD, and run an additional 16-day live race meet there, which would then give that operator the 100-mile simulcasting protection as well around its Cheyenne track on an annual basis to sustain the substantial costs related to its expansion of live horse racing. And the ultimate benefit in such a scenario is that live horse racing is being promoted and expanded into more communities in the state, and residents in those communities have the opportunity to partake at the permitted premises. And again, the point is that the legislature's intent is to promote and sustain live horse racing. However, because how the statute is currently being applied by the commission, the opposite is occurring. Operators really have no incentive to expand live horse racing into other Wyoming communities, as it is cost prohibitive to invest in a new track and run a 16-day meet without the 100-mile simulcasting exclusivity to sustain the substantial costs associated with doing so. And so as a result, over the past several years, the intent of the legislature has become lost, resulting in the promotion and expansion of OTB sites throughout the state rather than live horse racing. And a few more points merit mentioning concerning the unintended impacts of the commission's current interpretation. For instance, if permitted premises is accepted to only be during the time the live event is occurring, no Pari-Mutuel wagering would be allowed on live race days. That is because Pari-Mutuel wagering is to be conducted on a permitted premises. Thus, prior to the start of each race, wagering would not be allowed. Once the races are started, the Pari-Mutuel machines are locked by the state stewards and no wagering is permitted. In Wyoming statute 1125-104F states, no person shall hold any event with Pari-Mutuel wagering without obtaining a permit. So a permit that only applies during the time a live Pari-Mutuel event is occurring would allow for Pari-Mutuel wagering only during the time a live race is taking place. And practically this does not work. So I would direct the commission's attention to the following rules as well, which address when wagering can take place. And those are Chapter 9, Section 1D, II, covering Pari-Mutuel ticket sales, Chapter 9, Section 10I, governing closing of wagering in a contest, and Chapter 1, Section NN, concerning off time. So in addition to those negative impacts, numerous required supervisory duties required by the commission staff would not be able to be performed, as they would have no authority except when a live horse race is occurring. Licensing required by rule of individuals and vendors could only take place when the commission has authority on the permitted premises, that being during the time a live race is occurring. Again, Wyoming statute 1125-104E and the commission's corresponding rules address the requirements of the commission to authorize permits and supervise the conduct of all events provided for and regulated by statute. And this plainly cannot be accomplished if a permitted premises can only be applied during the time a live event is occurring. And the last point I'd like to make on unintended consequences of the commission's current position is that it also creates a conflict with the approval of county commissions for simulcasting under Wyoming statute 1125-102A7B, as noted in our petition. So in sum, the commission and the operators are all in this together, and we must work in order for horse racing to thrive for the years to come. And indeed, this is why 307 Horse Racing previously provided the commission with its analysis and now has submitted this petition. And we have also attempted to communicate with other operators. In fact, counsel for 307 Horse Racing and and Wyoming Horse Racing have communicated several times and then met in person back in December of 2020. And since then, 307 Horse Racing has continued to reach out to the other operators, and another meeting between 307 Horse Racing and Wyoming Horse Racing was recently held. And as Governor Mead mentioned at the commission's previous meeting, we need a firm baseline understanding of how the 100-mile simulcasting prohibition statute and rule are applied, which will then allow the operators to effectively negotiate waivers in accordance with the legislature's intent to support live horse racing. And again, we sincerely appreciate the Commission's consideration of the pending petition and time here today to work through how the laws endorsing horse racing are to be correctly interpreted and applied in order to not only sustain, but allow live horse racing here in Wyoming to thrive. And as you work through this issue, we encourage you to consult with Mr. Kaler on the granular details of the legal analysis and to review all the statutes and rules that are impacted. We also encourage you to assess the other operators' varying positions in the past on this issue and their current support of a legislative bill attempting to delete the 100-mile simulcasting statute. And with that, at this time, I'll turn it over to Jack Greer. Thank you for your time.
President Davis, commissioners, can everybody hear me? Good. Thank you. Thank you, Tyler. I'm going to try to keep mine brief here. I just thought it would be beneficial to the commission if I gave just a little bit of background and history on the 307 group and kind of why we're here today. And Tyler hit on a bunch of great points there that I hope everybody's considering throughout this speech here. First of all, I'm proud to say that 307 Horse Racing was founded with the sole intention to build up the horse racing industry in Wyoming, period. That's the only reason we've entered the game here. The horse racing industry in Wyoming should rival that of any other state in the country, but we think that success hinges on the 100-mile protection of live racetracks. 307 Horse Racing is owned and operated by Wyoming natives solely, consisting of my father, Randy Greer, myself, and Josh Allison, local of Cody, and my dad and I, local from Gillette. The Greers have owned racehorses and been involved in the horse racing industry for generations. My great-grandfather was the founder of United Tote, and we've been involved in the industry for a very long time. When Wyoming Horse Racing canceled their race meet in Gillette, Gillette still wanted to have horse racing at Camplex, and they were a little upset with the cancellation. At that time, my dad, Josh Allison, and I questioned what we could do to revive horse racing in Gillette. At that time, research was then conducted to determine if entry into racetrack management was financially viable. And the following areas were closely examined. First and foremost, the Wyoming Gaming Commission statutes and rules were closely examined. Following that was the legislative intent of those statutes and rules. In summary, the obvious intent of those statutes and rules is to promote the growth of live horse racing in the breeding industry in Wyoming. A 16 live race day minimum is required to simulcast or operate simulcast facilities in the state of Wyoming. Simulcast protection within 100 miles of a live racetrack only applies to tracks where a 16-day live race meet is held. We then looked into additional OTB opportunities, including electronic simulcasting and HHR machines, which also involved market protection for the live racetrack per Wyoming state statute and rules. The growth or lack of growth in the number of live race days historically was then evaluated. Live racing has been stagnant or declining while OTB handle has increased over year after year. We examined the dates of the other operators and the locations where these operators were placing their live race meets. We then looked into the competition available in the live racing market in Wyoming. 307 Horse Racing then entered into a long-term agreement with Camplex where there was no horse racing being conducted. 307 Horse Racing was first attempting to run a race meet in 2020. I wanted to bring that up just as a reminder to everyone. When we first entered this, we were originally trying to run a race meet in Gillette last year. We were going to try to put that together within the 60 days before a race meet requirement. Obviously, when Rock Springs went ahead and decided to run that fall in August, we then planned to do our race meet in 2021. We confirmed the availability to operate a 16-day race meet in Gillette while not affecting any historical race meets of any of the other operators. We then dug into the availability of the participants, horses, and staff to conduct a live race meet, and finally, obviously, the financial backing to do so. After we conducted all that research and spent that time doing such, we then inquired to the Wyoming Gaming Commission regarding the statutes and rules in May of 2020, and then requested applications for a simulcast and live event license. I want to then dive into why 307 horse racing entered the market. And again, that was simply to boost and promote the live horse racing in Wyoming. I would like to say that 307 horse racing is excited to work with the other operators and build up the racing industry together with them. 307 horse racing also sincerely appreciates what Wyoming Downs and Wyoming horse racing have done for the horse racing industry in Wyoming so far. Without those two operators and what they've done over the past several years, you know, there could not be horse racing here altogether, and we sincerely appreciate that. Over the past several years, the original intent of the legislation, we believe, has been ignored, and live horse racing has suffered. 307 horse racing wants to promote and again boost the live horse racing industry. Historical horse racing handle alone has increased from $500,000 in its first year to nearly $800 million in 2019. All while the live horse racing numbers have not increased accordingly. I'm going to run through a couple years here. 2014, 2-track operators, 20 live race days. 2015, 2-track operators, 31 live race days. 2016, 2-track operators, 22 live race days. 2017, 2-track operators, 30 live race days. 2018, 2-track operators, 34 live race days. 2019, 2-track operators, 30 live race days. 2020, 2-track operators, 26 live race days. And now 2021, 3-track operators, 50 live race days. It is also important to remember that per Wyoming state statute, the minimum required live race days by an operator to simulcast and operate simulcast facilities is 16 live race days. Again, 307 horse racing is committed to live horse racing in Wyoming and is demonstrating this by reviving the horse racing at Camplex and Gillette, and we will be operating at a complete loss in 2021. 307 horse racing is also investing millions of dollars into the live race meet into Gillette. This is being done through the live event itself, but also into capital investments being made into Camplex in that facility. I then want to go into the status of the industry under existing AG opinions. There is no opportunity for a new operator to enter the market in Wyoming under these current opinions. There's no incentive for the expansion of live race days in Wyoming currently. The continued of expansion of OTBs is obvious by the current operators. The stagnant or decline in the live racing industry is there, and the stagnant or decline in the breeding industry is there. The outlook for the industry starting in 2021, however, and beyond, with 307 horse racing and their interpretation of current statutes and rules being upheld and enforced, we have an obvious increase to 50 live race days starting in May, which will run through September in 2021. 2020, 26 race days. Obvious increase in total purses for the horsemen of Wyoming, which is an obvious increase in racing opportunities, which promotes the growth of the breeding industry in Wyoming. Revenue generated from OTBs within 100 miles of live racetracks supports the local live horse racing and the live racetrack operators. I want to ask the commission, what is the legislative intent and the practical application of these existing rules and statutes? What is the role of the Wyoming Gaming Commission? Is it to preserve and protect the growth of the horse racing industry, or is it to preserve and protect the OTB industry? The statute and the rule are clear and provide a true even playing field for racetrack operators to succeed in managing racetracks in Wyoming. What does a true even playing field look like for racetrack operators in Wyoming? I asked the question, what is more even than getting 100-mile protection around a racetrack for operating a 16-day live race meet, just like so many other states do, including Kentucky. 307 Horse Racing believes the future of the horse racing industry in Wyoming should be, the future of the horse racing industry in Wyoming should be clear, and it hinges on the 100-mile issue outcome. One direction promotes and boosts live horse racing, while the other direction promotes and boosts OTB expansion. Let us remember why OTBs even exist in Wyoming, which is to promote and boost the live horse racing industry. 307 horse racing is only expecting the statutes designed to support live racing be interpreted and enforced in a manner that supports that. Without the correct interpretation and enforcement of the 100-mile rule or statute, the 307 horse racing group will not be able to survive as the third operator in the state of Wyoming. On behalf of the entire 307 horse racing team, I would like to thank the entire Gaming Commission and the staff for their time, work, and continued devotion to the horse racing industry here. We greatly appreciate everyone's time and attention and commitment to this industry, and we look forward to continuing to work with you toward the racing season and cannot express our excitement towards offering live racing at Campflex this coming spring, which is right around the corner. With that being said, I'm going to pass this over to Governor Mead with some closing comments from our group, and I thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
President, Commission members, Director Moore, Senator Driscoll, Representative Walters, Senator Ellis, and Mr. Schiffer, good morning. Thank you again for giving me a little bit of time. I think the good news, President, is the two presentations that precede mine, they've done very well, so I will be brief, covering partly what they covered, but mostly just a summary. What we wanted to do today, President, Commission members, is talk a little bit about the legal analysis, talk about the history and the plans of 307, and talk about policy. And so let me just start where I addressed this during the last time I had the privilege of appearing before the commission. And that is, we have assumed that the Attorney General or Attorney General's opinions are correct. We see the one from Pete Michael when I was in office. And just so all of you know, we don't read every informal opinion that comes out of the AG's office, but now we have two. And I think it highlights why it's important for this to be addressed at this point in time, because it's clear that the Attorney General's office, what their point of view is as of this date. But I would like to remind the commission that the Attorney General's job is to make sure that the statutes and the rules that are passed by this commission and other commissions, that they are protected and they are legally enforced as they can be. That's not to say the Attorney General's office would support what is not supportable, but it is their job to try to see that those statutes and those rules are protected in court of law or in front of the commission, whatever it may be. But what the role of the Attorney General is not is to set policy. And that, I believe, is the question that remains before this commission, along with what else was said, but I think it mainly is a policy question. So I think we have to start with the other operators. They have a history of investment and work. They've established a lot in terms of off-track betting. That can't be ignored. And in fact, as Jack said, it should not only not be ignored, it should be appreciated. What else cannot be ignored is the dollars. Historical horse racing machine handles, as said by Jack, have increased from approximately 500,000 to 800 million in 2019. Now, I did some quick math on that, President, and there's a reason I'm an attorney and not a mathematician, so you can check me on this if you'd like. But I think that's a 1,500 time increase, 1,500 time increase in the handles from 2014 to 2019. Those are approximate numbers, but that's what we have. The other number, in addition to that number that should not be ignored, from 2014 to 2018, as mentioned, if you take those years and you average the number of horse racing days during those years, live horse racing days, it's a tad more than 27. It's not 32 as seemed to be required if you had two operators running the minimum 16 days each. Now, I think as the legislature passed this, historical horse racing, that one would anticipate with a 1,500 time increase in off-track betting and handles, I should say, that you would also see a 32-day increase average, if not an increase in the number of live horse races. And we haven't seen that. So I'm going to use an analogy that is simple and probably not exactly on point, but it is in some ways. And you always worry about using analogies because It can be turned and twisted, but this is sort of how I view it, probably in overly simplistic terms, but it is how I sort of look at where we are today. Assume that Congress passes a federal statute, and I believe that they have, for the health and safety and welfare of passengers on commercial flights. It says you cannot smoke during a flight. Subsequent to that, the FAA says, yes, you cannot smoke during a flight until it takes off, until it leaves the ground. Restrictions by timing can make the original statute meaningless. But if the FAA does that, and let's say it passes all legal hurdles, have we reached the goal of the health and safety for worries about secondhand smoke? Now, again, the analogy can be turned and twisted, but the point of this is that I think on all of these, you have to ask, has the policy that we wanted to achieve in Wyoming been met? I should say in 307's view, it has not been met. The number of horse races have not increased as we would anticipate, as you would hope. But I do want to say this. I understand there's a lot at stake here. The other two operators have been around and they've invested a lot. And unfortunately, as often is true, what follows when there's a lot at stake is angst and anger and unfortunately even accusations at times. But this commission is neither a court, nor is it have to deal with the burden of resolving the friction between operators. But you are a group that has been put together in a position to set policy. And I would say the goal, the dream of when historical horse racing was passed, to have a more robust live horse racing industry in Wyoming has not been met. Wyoming certainly is big enough. And what we cherish in Wyoming is important enough that it seems that three operators ought to be able to work in Wyoming and improve horse racing in Wyoming as we envisioned, as many should envision when historical horse racing was passed. There's a reason for the 100-mile rule. There's a reason the legislature passed that it was signed into law. The reason wasn't to see how many off-track betting sites we could have. The reason was we wanted to help the industry of horse racing and all that goes with that, our traditions, our love of horses, the pageantry and the fun that goes with horse racing, and the economy. So now today, respectfully, commission members, we appreciate the opportunity to present. And in my summary, I think it's a policy question. Assume that the AG's opinions are correct. Are we headed in the right years? Commission members, 10 years from now, are we going to look back and say, we've seen another 1,500 time increase on the one side, but we've not seen an increase in live horse racing days on the other side? I hope that's not going to happen. And I think there's an opportunity now for the commission to make sure it doesn't happen. President, commission members, thank you very much for giving us time today.
Thank you, Governor. At this time, Charlie, do we want to take a break or do we want to continue with the presentation from Wyoming horse racing? Hello, Charlie. Where'd you go? There you are.
Having to get back online there. You do have a hand raised from Mr. Michael I with Wyoming Horse Racing. It's up to you, President. What would you like to do?
Let's go ahead and, Mr. Michael, you have the floor.
Well, thank you. And certainly if your pleasure is to take a break, we can do that as well. But I appreciate the opportunity again to speak with you. I wanted to start with thanking 307 and their attorneys for reaching out to us and visiting. My frustration on the last one was with the fact that I felt like we hadn't had those communications, and I feel like they've rectified that and have made an effort to talk. And so, like I said, I think that's the most important first step, at least, is that we have those communications. And so I do appreciate that. Having said that, we certainly very much disagree on the right reading of this and the right outcome and the right policy and the policy implications for the state of Wyoming. I'm going to be brief today. I'm going to rely almost completely on the Attorney General opinion that Governor Meade referenced, mostly because Peter Michael's way smarter than I am. And I think he did a really nice job setting out the policy considerations, the legislative considerations, how to read these statutes together, and what this commission should be considering. And again, I don't want to repeat what we said last time, but you can't look at 102 as an island. You can't look at that alone. When you're trying to interpret legislative intent, when you're trying to interpret the statutes, you have to do exactly what Peter Michael did. You have to look at all of the statutes together. And if you look at, you looked at 102 together with 105, and the language of 105 that says, a permit is effective only for times and places for which it is issued. And they also pointed to 104 and the examples from that. But as they looked at all of the statutes together, they didn't look at one piece of a statute in isolation. When they looked at all the statutes together, this was a conclusion of Peter Michael and the Attorney General's office, and is consistent with what Mike Taylor has said in his letter. And I think this is a critical point that we haven't talked about. They concluded, quote, to extend the prohibition to the entire day or even the entire year would require us to either add or remove language from the statutes defining when the permit is effective. So Peter Michael found the exact opposite. He said, if you were going to do what 307 is asking you to do here, it would actually take a statutory change. And that's at the top of page 3. And that's the first conclusion that I think is important. I think it's exactly right. The statutes are clear. They define when a permit is effective. And if you wanted to change and you wanted to do what 307 is proposing, you would actually have to go back to the legislature and change the statutes. So not only is the legislative intent clear our way, you would have to change the statutes to go the other way. They also concluded, and I'll quote the next paragraph on page 3, while some of the industry appear to assume that the commission permits location or premises on an annual basis, that assumption is not supported by either the plain language of the statutes or by the previous commission permitting practices. So both the plain language of the statute and your permitting practices go the opposite direction and go the direction that we've said, that it's permitted while the live horse racing is going on, and during that time is when you have to close down your off-track betting. Now, we also, if you read my memo and if you read Peter Michael's memo, there's a lot of talk in there about the rule that the commission put in place in 1994 is absolutely clear. And that rule is properly promulgated, and there's no doubt what that rule means. And it's been in place since 1994, and it's been implemented under the plain language. And then in 2015, we have this Attorney General's opinion. And both its opinion and my opinion talk about why that matters that it's been in place for so long. And why with the rule that's been in place for so long and has been enforced by the commission for so long, why that matters. And it's not just some legal kind of esoteric thing of, we like things that have been around a long time. Why that matters is because operators have come to rely on the way that rule has been implemented. And they've built businesses based on that. They've invested millions of dollars based on the commission's existing rules and the existing statutes. And certainly since 2015, it's disingenuous to argue that it was unclear, that this is Peter Michael's opinion sets out exactly how this is. And you have two operators that now have invested millions of dollars based on the way that that's applied and based on the rule that's in place. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's not some just esoteric rule, that it's the reason why, since it's been here since 1994, matters is because we have relied on that and invested millions of dollars. The second part is the legislature, if we're trying to go here and we're trying to ascertain legislative intent, since 1994, it's been clear how those statutes are being applied. The legislature has had 26 years that they could have changed it if they thought that it was an inappropriate or it wasn't being applied in accordance with their intent. And they haven't. And again, certainly since 2015, with this opinion that came out, they certainly could have changed the statutes, and they haven't. The final point is 307 or Wyoming horse racing or Wyoming Downs in no way is trying to keep out competition. It's the opposite. They're saying, look, we welcome 307. We'll work with 307. We'll allow you to come in and open your OTBs, open your live horse racing. That's great. If the market supports it, we want you to be a part of it. And we want you to come in and we want you to compete. What we are saying is that we have real employees, and these are real people, and these are real money that we've invested into those communities. And to come in and say that we have to close them down based on what we say is a clearly erroneous reading of the statute is not fair. And that's not good public policy either. And I'll defer to Eugene, Joyce, and to the others to talk more about the policy and Wyoming horse racing and the benefits. I would also just add one final point on that live horse racing days in and of themselves is not the only metric of successfully building the horse racing industry in Wyoming. I think if you look at a number of different metrics, it's been very successful. The number of horses that are part of the Wyoming All-Bred program, the purses, all those things that have happened in Wyoming are a result of Wyoming horse racing and Wyoming Downs investing their money under this set of rules and building an industry here in Wyoming that has been successful and will continue to be successful. And we hope it's successful with 307 as a part of it. So with that, I'll cede my time over to Eugene or whoever else wants to go next.
Thank you, Mike. Eugene, you want the floor now?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate it. Mr. President, Commissioners, I would like to, say it's great to have Governor Meade on the call. We wouldn't be having this discussion if it wasn't for his leadership back in 2013, which ushered in historic horse racing. And I appreciate everything that he has personally and professionally done to help our industry. So thank you, Governor Meade. I'd like to make a couple of comments. And there's kind of a, the legal arguments are the legal arguments. I think they're sound. But there's some economic realities. There's an economic pet theory out there by 307 as how our industry should be structured. And the argument that looking at the revenue coming in versus the number of race days not expanding, that there's a problem with our industry. Now, I would tell you that the reason some years there wasn't 32 days of horse racing was because their weather plays a large role into the number of race days that you can do. Now, when I first came before the Pari-Mutuel Commission in 2011, when there was no horse racing in the state, and there was no revenue from historic horse racing, but there was a rule in place for 16 days, I told the commission then, and it's my opinion, and that I would like the discussion to go from number of live race days to purse money and racing opportunity. Because the reality of our industry here in the state is the number of horse races, the number of race days are really dictated by the calendar and by the weather, okay? And another big factor is the horse population. And as a horse owner, I can tell you that between Memorial Day and Labor Day, you're lucky to get maybe 6-7 outs on a particular horse. So every time that horse runs, you want to be running for the biggest purse possible. And so I'm proud how what we've done as far as Wyoming horse racing has done for the purses for the horsemen. Proud that we've grown the revenue that grows the Wyoming Bred Fund that incentivizes people to breed horses. The reality is if there was 5 racetracks in Wyoming, if you had 80 race days, okay, it would actually be detrimental to the horse racing industry. I think Mr. Greer, had said that, he wanted us to be, a beacon, a beacon to the rest of the world, and that, they'd look to Wyoming. Well, it matters that if you dilute the number of racing opportunities for a horse, or he's spread out, so why the purse money gets spread out, it doesn't help the horse owner. What they need to know is that between Memorial Day and Labor Day, they're going to have a shot at running at some really big purses, and you're going to have some full fields. So, that's what I'd like to say about race days. We race 16 days at 3 different locations with 1/3 of the revenue we have today. So this argument that there's no incentive for a new operator to get in this without obviating this rule is nonsense. It's nonsense. Where do you want to invest your money? Do you want to invest it in legal fees, or do you want to invest it in starting OTBs and getting to work and rolling up your sleeves? We're still on only half the counties. We need to get into those smaller markets. All the economic analysis I've seen says this market, the overall market here for HHR, could double over the next 3 to 5 years. There is plenty of money to be made by 307 if they want to participate in the economic model that's been in place for 26 years. For them to come in and think that they can force us to shut down, put my employees out of work, take our money, poach from us, that this is their only way forward is nonsense. It's nonsense. And the other thing that, I would say, the original discussion that Senator Schiffer had with Governor Meade and myself was that with this new HHR law, that we wanted to get direct revenue to the cities and counties. And so when we talk about unintended impacts on what this rule change would mean, was you'd have one operator, let's say in Casper, let's say there's one track operator in Casper. Do you really think they're going to operate 4 to 5 OTBs in that market? The history is anytime there's competition, another OTB comes in, it grows the overall revenue for the cities and counties. And so by having one operator as opposed to multiple operators competing with each other, spending advertising, marketing dollars, hiring people, I mean, that's a strong economic engine, and it has served our industry well since 2013. And as I said before, there is a model in place that has served the cities and counties well, the states well. The horsemen, the breed fund has grown because Wyoming Downs and Wyoming horse racing compete market by market to try to grow revenue for everybody. The pie is going to grow. There is room for these guys to move forward, but I will tell you the unintended economic impacts of the way they want to order things, is going to be detrimental to the state, the horsemen, and to our entire industry. And with that, Mr. President, if anyone has questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, Eugene. At that, do we have from the commission questions for Mr. Garrett or Mr. Greer or Governor Meade or Eugene or Mr. Michaeli at this time? Let's hear some feedback from the commission at this time.
Mr. President, Commissioner Leinen.
Go ahead, Randy.
It's been mentioned both by Governor Meade, Mr. Greer, Eugene Joyce, Wyoming Horse Racing, about the number of race days. And just a little history, because I went back and reviewed minutes, okay? 2013, there were 3 live horse racing days in the state of Wyoming. That was before the new law came in. In 2014, this commission, of which I was a part at the time, you had 2 track operators and 20 live horse racing days. And that was because the commission went ahead and put a waiver in for the number of race days, because that was the first time in a number of years that they were able to even operate, okay? We gave a waiver to both track operators to run as many race days as they possibly could. Okay, they were just getting this back up and going, so we gave them a waiver, so they only had to have 20 live race days. In 2015, we had 2 track operators and 31 live race days. The reason we didn't have 32 was because of weather and track conditions. And that is one of the things that we are tasked with, is the health, safety, and welfare of the horse and the horses and the jockeys. And the track was deemed not to be sufficient to race. So we gave a waiver that year, this commission did. In 2016, we only had 22 live race days. Well, because of a glitch in the historic horse racing,
Wyoming Downs' attorney wants to Tracy.
I'll go ahead. President Davis, can I go ahead and continue?
Yeah, Randy, if you want to finish your.
Well, the reason we only had 22 live race days in 2016 is because we suspended the permits of the 2 operators because it was determined that the HHR terminals that they were running at that time did not conform to Wyoming statutes. So we granted a waiver because we went ahead, and in a ruling for us, we went ahead and basically shut them down. 2017, 30 live race days again. They had a terrible race. They had a terrible rainstorm in Gillette that basically washed out the last weekend of race days. And 2 track operators, 2018, 34 live race days. We had 2 more than they needed to run, but that was fine, and we did it. Again, 2 track operators in 2019, and we had 30 live race days, and again, that was due to weather. And the reason you can't just say, okay, we're not going to run this weekend, we're going to run the next weekend. The horsemen can't get their horses there. They can't go ahead and get their people there to run this for the safety of the people. And in 2020, we had 2 track operators and only 26 live race days. And that was when the pandemic hit. And that was why we went ahead and granted a waiver in 2020. So we have, per statute and per our rules, the ability to grant waivers so that the operators do not have to go ahead and meet the 16-day requirement, 16 live race day requirement. I think going from 3 live race days in 2013 to what we've done is incredible. And I have a question for Mr. Greer. If you get a weekend, we grant you 16 days in Gillette, and you get a weekend where you get completely washed out because of rain or weather or, thunderstorms or whatever, what is your plan to go ahead? Will you come to us for a waiver if you can't run 16 days because you were washed out? If you did, we would probably grant the waiver. We have tried, this commission has tried to go ahead and work with the operators and work with the horsemen to make it a safe and viable industry for live race days. You put the information out there, and like I said, I went back and read the minutes of why we granted the waivers. And I think we did it in a logical and safe way. I have some real reservations about, and to me, in a lot of ways, what 307 Racing is trying to do is get an exclusive franchise for the entire eastern part of the state of Wyoming. And I don't think that was ever the intent of the legislature, or should it have been. With that, I'll finish. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. With that, I'm glad you were able to clear up the smoke around the race days. And with that, we'd like to proceed with Tracy. It's your chance on the floor, Tracy.
Thank you, President Davis. Tracy Laycock with Hearst Applegate, representing Wyoming Downs. My comments were actually going to be what Commissioner Leinen's comments were, in that we have worked very hard with the commission. We've worked diligently to race as many days as we've been able to. And truly, only upon good cause were we given a waiver in past years. And so I appreciate that rundown, which is what I was going to go through. I just want to make one other comment. this idea that there isn't a commitment to live horse racing, 2020 is the example of the commitment to live horse racing in this state. There were many, many tracks in the United States that had no race days. If they had race days, they didn't have spectators. And proudly, we ran. I'm proud that we were able to run 26 days. There was a lot of talk in the early part of 2020 whether we were going to be able to run it all. And we invested the time and the money to be able to bring that to the state. And it's something that we're very proud of. Historically, I believe that the two existing permittees have demonstrated to this commission their commitment to live horse racing and how important it is. And it's also important to remember that the OTB, the increase in the OTB revenue, not only helps the purses and the Wyoming Bread Program, but it also helps the cities and counties. There's been a significant amount of tax contribution to cities and counties in this state, which I think is also a great service. And when we're talking about public policy, also important. We think about that if we applied the rule or applied as the rule as Wyoming, or excuse me, 307 horse racing would like us to apply it. Essentially, tomorrow there would be no OTBs in the northern part of the state. And that revenue from those cities and counties would be gone. 307 currently doesn't have a pending OTB permit with this commission. And so just something to, anecdotally to point out. But my main comment is that we have demonstrated a commitment to live horse racing. 2020 really was a testament to that commitment, and I'm very proud that we were able to run last year. I am willing to stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. At this time, Jack Greer, you had your hand up. I see a little blue hand.
President Davis, thank you. I just wanted to address Commissioner Leinen, since you directed those kind of questions to me there. First of all, in no way is 307 horse racing trying to discredit or point blame at anything that the commission has done in the past, since the inception. We greatly appreciate all the work of all the commissioners and greatly appreciate the work of Wyoming Downs and Wyoming Horse Racing. We did not try to imply, and I apologize if we made it come across that way, that there was not waivers in place for these other operators to conduct less than the 16 days. Obviously, per statute, waivers had to be in place to do that, and we greatly appreciate that motion to do so. And as you mentioned, if we were to get rained out one weekend, we would want to do what's best for the horses. So we would obviously come to you for a waiver at that time as well. But I'm going to add here that, the proof is in 2021. We're at 50 live race days. Weather, rain, snow, what have you, 27 days has been the average for the past, since HHR machines. And all of a sudden in 2021, we're at 50 live race days. So I want to mention that. And I guess to the point about this loss of revenue and the loss of jobs, I want to make something very clear from the entire 307 horse racing group. We're just trying to have the statutes and the rules enforced and interpreted correctly so we can properly come to an agreement with these other operators to work with them within the 100 miles of our live racetrack. Yeah, we have never once said that we're going to shut down these OTBs or lay off these employees. Obviously, no matter how this shakes down in our favor, we would obviously want to work with the other operators to their best interest and to our best interest. And what's the best interest of the horsemen? We're not going to do something that's going to lose a city or a county or the state any money. We would want to position that transition, if that needed to happen, where it happened the best for everyone involved. And the points of this loss of revenue and the loss of jobs, I just think it is not appropriate. That is not our intention. We just want the statutes and the rules interpreted and enforced correctly so we can properly come to an agreement with these other operators. And with that, I'll put it back to any questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Jack. At this time, I did have one question on the 100 or 1,500% increase. Would that be due to the availability of the OTBs within the state of Wyoming that would produce that 1,500? If we didn't have investments from our permittees, the 1,500% investment or increase in revenue would not exist. It's the availability throughout the state by the OTBs existing in those positions. And we've had that conversation with the Breeders' Award. What is going to be the cap on the Breeders' Fund? I mean, with the expansion of the OTBs and the ability to grow that fund, what would be the cap on that? These are the things that we're seeing from the investment of these permittees and hopefully you guys in the future. It's the availability to the public, the opportunity to go to these things. With that, thank you. Are there any more questions here from the commission?
President Davis?
Yes, Randy.
I'd like to ask Mr. Greer another question, and I'd also, if there's anyone from Wyoming All Breeds in the meeting, I'd like to pose it to both of them. Per our rules, any operator who's going to do a live race meet has to have in place an agreement with the Horsemen's Association, and we have a letter from your horseman or your horse, Wyoming All Breeds, in opposition to what you are requesting. Can you tell us why either one of you, why the horsemen of Wyoming All Breeds are opposed to this?
Commissioner Leinen, this is Jack, President Davis, Commissioners, thank you. Honestly, Commissioner Leinen, I think part of the issue is in the misinformation on this issue. I think there's been a lot of, information spread out there amongst the horsemen and everybody, for that fact, involved in this industry and involved in this matter that is not being informed correctly. So I think that would be my answer to your question.
Commissioner Davis, or President Davis, is Commissioner Leinen again.
Go ahead, Randy.
I guess the problem in the communication then, Mr. Greer, lies solely with you. They're your horsemen's association. What we have is a letter that they're opposed to this, and now if they're uninformed, isn't it your responsibility to inform them?
Commissioner Leinen, President Davis, yes, that is correct, and we've been trying to do so since the inception of the company. Again, with the misinformation and the opposition to this, it's difficult to have that conversation and get to an even playing field of understanding. We've been trying to have that conversation from the start here, and have been in touch with Mr. George Spiva and Whitey Call with the Horsemen's Group and a bunch of others members of the Horsemen's Group. Even horsemen that aren't involved with the Horsemen's Group. We've been trying to have those conversations from the beginning. So again, I think it's just the misinformation that's out there.
Are there any more questions at this time? Do we have any questions, Nick, from the public?
Yeah, President Davis, it's open, so anybody can unmute themselves and identify and move forward.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Aha, I see someone. Colleen?
Yes. I have put in for public comments. I don't know, President Davis, is this the correct time?
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. So I just want to say good morning to Director Moore, President Davis, and members of the Wyoming Gaming Commission, and our distinguished legislative members that are also on this call. My name is Colleen Faber. I'm actually a Campbell County Commissioner. And so I'm just going to speak today on behalf of live horse racing, and specifically in Campbell County, and hoping that we can find some fairness in the marketplace. So currently, as we know, there's a lot of racetracks across the state that are sitting idle. And I've had horse breeders, constituents in Northeast Wyoming actually reach out to me. So I'm not sure if there are members of the all breeds, but they are breeders of horses that would like to race. And specifically, they would like to race in Northeast Wyoming. So I've become more aware of this. I have been on the commission now a year and in Campbell County. And we have had requests for, we had one site operating in the county for a while, and one site that was permitted but had been sitting idle for quite some time. They came back to us and asked to actually switch that location, which was granted. So now there was 2 open in the city of Gillette. We also had another request then shortly thereafter asking for more of a blanket approval to do these mini sites, which are not actually manned. If I've tried to really dig in to understand this over the past months, just to kind of see what's happening and actually gain more understanding for our county and where we want to move with this. But we denied that request. We felt like that looked a little bit, and again, we were digging into what was happening to, sort of a blocking up our entire county for one operator for machines and off-track betting and simulcasting. All the while, we had no live horse racing happening. So while we had a lot of machines and things in businesses, or we have very limited too, but a request for a widespread approval, we didn't have any live horse racing at a very premier facility in our minds. Of course, we're Campbell County proud. Everybody knows that. But we have a wonderful facility. We want to see it used, but we didn't see it happening. So that was a lot of concern on my part and several of us who have been looking into this more deeply. So my understanding of this 100-mile rule, and I'm a horseman, not a race horseman, but understand that industry and the expense and what it takes. And I understand that is a protection for live horse racing. And rightly so, it's expensive. And we need to promote that. Now I have, again, constituents and they are breeders and they want to race in Northeast Wyoming. So, I feel that we need to do what we can to support a full slate of horse racing in Campbell County at a great track. And it takes a lot to do that. So we're looking at a lot of hard times in Campbell County right now. We're looking for many opportunities, and we want to support live horse racing. We want to support it big. We want to see it happening in our county. We have facilities and a great way to grow this industry. In another part of the region, the only tracks operating are hundreds of miles from our community. Our community members are big into horse. I feel like we're the Stevensville of Texas in Campbell County and Gillette. We promote the horse industry with rodeo, with a multitude of things, but not live horse racing. I think people understand our community's ability to put on large events, to draw from a large area, to draw nationally. I just feel that we need to find balance and bring balance and fairness to all these producers. I don't go down to Southwest Wyoming a lot. I used to for work. But I would love to go to a live horse race in Gillette. Billings is our closest. That's out of state. I think we need to really look at this closely. We obviously don't see the horse racing happening for a reason in Campbell County. And I would just really implore this commission to look for the balance and how we can promote this and make fairness for all these producers and operators. I don't think we look for unemploying or shutting down those facilities. I would hope the 100-mile rule is clear that there is negotiation that can occur. I would gladly be supporting of, visiting with you further on this and helping us to promote this live horse racing at our facilities and just promote the industry. I think it's a great industry, but I want to see the live horse racing. Right now we have a lot of machines and a lot of betting facilities, but we don't have as far as in our neck of the woods in Wyoming, we don't see the live horse racing, and it's important for our breeders in the horse industry. So I really thank you for your time. And I really, like I said, I hope we can find some great balance and promote all of these producers and operators to bring this to more of the state. So thank you again, and I appreciate your time.
Are there any questions for Colleen? I believe 2019 we had racing at the Camplex, didn't we? In 2020, because of the COVID, we had to waive the Camplex racing. Is that correct?
That's correct, President Davis.
Okay. Eugene, you had your hand up?
Yeah, if I could, and I admire Colleen Faber's passion about live horse racing. I share that with her. But I operated live horse racing there for 5 years. I had a contract, had negotiated a 5-year contract with the Camplex starting in 2021. I was blocked from that from 307. Okay, all fair in love and war. All right, they snaked the contract away from me, but I was operating in Campbell County for 5 years, and we wanted to continue that relationship moving forward, but Campbell County made other plans with another operator. And again, just going back to the comment that without this, there's no incentive for a new operator. Again, I completely disagree. You know, we have millions of dollars ready to invest and grow, but with this threat that would literally knock us out of half the markets in Wyoming, we can't move forward. And so there's a lot of upside for the industry to move forward and to have a third operator if they want to roll up their sleeves and do the hard work and get the job done. And that's the only comment I'd make at this point. Thank you.
Jeff.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Esposito. I am the executive director at Camplex. I appreciate the time to participate and speak with you today. I can tell you with absolute certainty what Mr. Joyce just said is not true. When Mr. Joyce,
excuse me, Jeff, we're getting off on a different subject then.
Well, I just want to clear up that when Mr. Joyce said that if he didn't get dates here, he couldn't race, 307 gave him their dates. He was not stopped from racing here. He chose not to. And he left us with a bill still unpaid.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. George? George Fiza? Hello, George. Yep, you have the floor.
Yeah.
Hi, George.
President Davis, Director Moore, Commissioners. In response to what Mr. Greer has said, I've been in touch with his father, Randy. Every time I ask a question about what their plans are, if or if not they get this this rule vacated, I get no information. So WABRA's responsibility is to the horsemen. If 307 horse racing doesn't get their machines up and running by whatever method they deem necessary, the horsemen are the ones that are going to suffer from this. If you were to take 25% of the business away from Wyoming horse racing and Wyoming Downs, that would automatically drop their purses by 25%. If they don't, if 307 horse racing doesn't get machines up and running to where they are contributing to the Horsemen's Fund, the point values are going to go down significantly, and that's the way a lot of the breeders and horse owners make this work. So either I'm talking to the wrong person, or I know that I'm not getting the answers that make me comfortable with with the situation. We do have a horseman's agreement with 307. We have helped them get their entry forms for all their races going. You know, we've been trying to talk with them and cooperate with them. We want them in the horse industry. We want the races in Gillette, but we're just standing on pretty shaky ground as to, you know, what we can do to help them and be comfortable with what we're doing for the horse racing. Any questions?
Thank you, George. Are there any questions for George? Randy? Or Jack?
President Davis, Mr. George Spiva, thank you for that. And I guess that to answer that point and to get to it here, you know, that's the whole intention of this meeting here today. And what we're trying to address with the commission is to answer some of this unanswered, you know, direction here with where this is all headed. So I think any misinformation you think you've been getting from 307, it's basically, you know, unanswered questions we have as well. So I want to address that the whole intention of what we're doing here in this meeting today is to address those issues so we can properly inform you on the direction of where this is all headed here. And greatly appreciate your group and look forward to putting on races with you here. And you've been nothing but helpful, but hopefully that answers that point.
Thank you, Jack. George?
Davis? Yes, President Davis, I don't think that we've got misinformation. I just don't think we've gotten any information. So we need to have a better line of communications, because unless we're comfortable for the horsemen, it's really hard to endorse what you're trying to do, Jack. And God knows we appreciate you guys. We want racing in Gillette. I think there's room in the market for another player, and good luck to you guys.
Thank you, George. Are there more questions at this time?
Mr. President.
Go ahead.
This is Commissioner Pacheco. I'm looking at Exhibit 6 under background, and it appears that this question was asked and answered in 2015, and it was the same question between Wyoming Downs and Wyoming Horse Racing. And after the opinion of the AG's office, that they just needed to come to the table and come to an agreement. And I guess this question would go to Mr. Greer. Have you come to the table? Do you know what that looks like? That you can coexist, or can you coexist, looking at that AG's opinion or a ruling?
President Davis, Commissioner Pacheco, thank you for the question. We're definitely ready to come to an agreement with these other operators. Again, as I mentioned earlier, our intention here is to get the proper interpretation and enforcement of the 100-mile statute and the rule in place so we can properly come to that agreement and have those discussions. Currently, we've tried to have a couple of those discussions, and they literally go nowhere, because obviously there's two completely different interpretations on state statutes at this time, which is why we're addressing the commission with this issue.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions at this time? Is there any other public comment at this time? Sounds like we've thoroughly vented this. So at this time, we'd be looking for a motion. Oh, is that correct, Charlie?
We did have people signed up. Mr. Oliver had signed up to do public comment. I don't know if he wants to unmute, makes a comment. I'm trying to look at my screen. Mr. Lamb from Wyoming Downs, I just want to make sure that we're getting all the people that are signed in here the opportunity to make comment.
Okay, then I guess we'll turn it over to Nick and he can let them in one at a time or however he does that.
Well, they appear to be here, so if they're still muted, that must mean that they're not intending to comment, I'm guessing.
Oh, there's a green one over there, or maybe there isn't. Oh, there's two hands. Representative Walters?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go
If I
ahead.
may, I would just ask the operators of Wyoming Downs and Wyoming Horse Racing a question of curiosity that I have is, do they believe the way the 100-mile rule is currently being interpreted, do they feel that it's being interpreted correctly and they're happy with the way it's being interpreted at this time?
Eugene, would you like to respond to that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President, Representative Walters. Yes, I mean, it's been interpreted this way for a long time. And again, going back to, how we got to where we are today, it's because like any business, you want to know what the rules are in order to operate. And we have made millions and millions of dollars of investments to grow the industry to the point where it is today. And this uncertainty now that 307 is raising this causes great concern with my partners, my investors, the bankers, my lawyers, in that their way of changing things would immediately wipe out 35% of our business if we couldn't come to an agreement. And, I see Mr. Greer shaking his head, but that's really what they're asking for is kind of, I don't see them invested in OTB, so I think their revenue stream is based on coming to an agreement and having us pay money that we're earning at our OTBs to them. That's the only assumption I can make from this. But as a business owner, you want to know what the rules of the roads are. What's the size of the sandbox so that you can make investments. We're willing to make more investment. There's more people and more money on the sidelines ready to come into Wyoming and really grow this industry. And so there's a big growth potential. We believe a third operator, 307, has more than an opportunity to make enough money to pay for their livelihood and to make a sizable profit if they want to compete. And who's going to be the winner if they compete? The winner is going to be the cities and counties where they come into and compete with the other two operators. So it's in the best industry, I believe, for the state, the horsemen, and our industry to keep the rules as they are now in place. And that rule has been in place for 26 years, and we've been operating under it since the inception of historic horse racing. We have put our money on the table. We've made our bets. We've grown the industry, and we just need to know that that is going to continue in the future. I hope that answered your question.
Partly, yeah. May I follow up, President Davis?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So with that answer, there has been a bill filed this session that will be heard in March to delete that 100-mile language in statute. So would you be supportive? I'm trying to understand through your answer if you would be supportive of just a complete deletion of the 100-mile language.
Yes, Mr. President, Representative Walters. Yes, because even if 307 loses this round, the threat, and I don't know what their intentions are. Again, I'm frustrated like Mr. Spiva in that they're not talking to us as far as what their plans are, what their business plan is. But with the threat of a lawsuit that could take several years, and we've seen lawsuits, their devastating effect on our industry in Kentucky and other states, that they would hold that sword over our head, and it makes like I said, our investors, our partners, our lawyers very nervous that there's something out there in the future. Let's say they took it to a court case and they won that court case. By filing this bill, and again, in this age of COVID and the budget restraints we have in Wyoming, we don't need to be fighting a frivolous lawsuit over this because they have a pet economic model that they'd like to impose upon the rest of our industry. So the reason we're supporting that bill is just to take that away, just get it off completely so we can all move forward. We all know what the rules and regulations are, and we know how to operate within a regulatory framework here in Wyoming.
Did that answer your question, Representative Walters?
Yes, thank you, and thank you, President Davis.
Okay, at this time, Tracy, you would have the floor.
Thank you, President Davis, Representative Walters, Tracy Laycock on behalf of Wyoming Downs. Representative Walters, Wyoming Downs does believe that the rule has been implemented fairly, and something that hasn't come up today, but has come up in previous commission meetings, is that there is the provision for a waiver of the 100-mile rule. And that is something that the two current permittees have done for several years. And I think we have several more years of waiver in place with the other operator. I exchanged emails with counsel for 307 and on multiple occasions sent them our current waiver and said, we are happy to sign a waiver with you. And I have not heard back from them on that.
Thank you, Tracy. Tyler, I believe you are next. If you'll unmute, Tyler.
President Davis.
Go ahead.
Gaming Commissioners, Director Moore. I'd like to just circle back to the legal analysis. We've heard a lot about the economics and just a general policy of the general issue. But I'd like to go back to the legal issue and the statute. And I'd like to start with, while I appreciate my learned friend, Mr. Michael I's current conviction, that the statute is absolutely clear and absolutely is in his client's favor. Commissioner Pacheco, you raised the 2015 Attorney General letter, and I would direct the Commission's attention to the background section, which provides that not too long ago, Wyoming Downs was arguing the same thing we are today. I think that establishes that there is some confusion as to how the interpretation of the statute has been applied by the Commission in the past and is continuing to be misapplied. When you look at the statute, and the one thing I do agree with Mr. Michael Ion is that you have to look at all the statutes and rules together and in harmony. And I learned that when I was at the Supreme Court for a number of years, interpreting statutes. And when you do that, and as I explained earlier, you see that some rules and some statutes just simply conflict and are rendered meaningless and produce absurd results when you take the interpretation that's currently being applied by the Commission. The statute is clear. It's a 100-mile prohibition with respect to a 16-day race meet operated at a live racetrack. And when you invest that time and money and investment into the live horse racetrack, you earn that right to have that exclusive opportunity to support what you've invested in that community. And I would also like to address just one other point, and that is this losing sight from the forest of the trees with the waivers of 16 days. There are going to be weather days. There are going to be days where all of the operators are going to need to have a waiver from the Commission. And that's the tree. But however, the forest is, as the County Commissioner, Ms. Faber, mentioned, other locations around the state, those being Gillette, possibly Cheyenne. We don't see any live horse racing there for a reason. There's no incentive to have live horse racing there and invest what is needed to have a track in those locations. When the statute is applied correctly and interpreted correctly, that incentivizes these operators to take the next step and expand live horse racing into these other communities. With that, I thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back.
At this time, thank you. Tyler, we have Liaison Schiffer. Are you on there? I see you're.
Yes, I am. And, President Davis, members of the Commission, I was part of the history in California of starting these simulcast facilities, and originally intended to protect the racetracks that were running was true. But what happened was, and I think we need to think about this, the patrons who were going to the places to bet, who could not go there because of the 10-mile rule or whatever rule that was in effect there, suddenly became non-patrons. In other words, when it was inconvenient for them to do what they came to do, they looked at other gaming opportunities to go and do their gambling. I think it's true here that if these barriers are going to drive everybody's patrons to South Dakota, to the casinos, to wherever, and they're not going to come back. I really applaud the solution of the proposed repeal of this 100-mile limitation, because I think it will facilitate everybody to compete evenly, and the best operator is going to do the best. And that's really what the commission should strive to promote, as well as facilitate the patrons who are really the bottom line to the success of horse racing and revenue to the counties and cities of this state. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I see, is there any more hands up there, Nick? There's a new one. Danny, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking, and I apologize for being late.
Thank you and welcome aboard. I do have one question, having some information up there at Idaho, and when we were racing up there, their OTBs were housed at the track, not at off-track sites such as we do in Wyoming. And their season started in May and went till the end of September. So they're in one place, one long racing season in Idaho. And the OTBs operated there 12 months of the year out of that facility, not any place else outside of just that facility if you wanted to do simulcasting. And now with today's technology, we're talking the last 10 years, what has happened. And you see this with your personal device, that you can bet on anything, any place, anytime within the United States or even overseas. So I'm not really sure where we're going with technology, but I think, as Dan said there, we need to rely upon our ability to create the best opportunity for the public and leave it up to that. The public will judge who will succeed. Thank you. Any other questions?
President Davis, Representative Walters has his hand.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, President Davis. Just in regards to your comment about the extent of betting available in mobile environments, legally in Wyoming, you cannot bet on most anything via your mobile device. That is still illegal because the legislature has not passed anything to legalize wagering like that while you are in the state of Wyoming. While yes, it does take place, it is taking place in an illegal market currently. And so just wanted to clarify that. However, there will be legislation this year to try and change that.
Yes, duly noted. Duly noted. Jack, you have your hand up.
Yeah, let me take my hand down, I guess. President Davis, Commission, I wanted to make one point, and I appreciate Dan and President Davis' comments on focusing on the public here and doing what's best for them, and that is our intention. I just want to add that I doubt the legislative's intent was to have competing OTBs on every street corner in Wyoming, and these other operators have obviously had 10, 15 years to build up their companies and their industry here. And they can say all they want that there's, half the counties are still available to go penetrate here. But we all live in Wyoming. We understand the population here. And it's saturated. The state of Wyoming is saturated with machines. So the only way for 307 to compete in a market like that would be to build a competing OTB across the street corridor and try to drag patrons out of their OTB. And we just don't see that appropriate, and which is why we thought the legislative intent of those statutes and rules were appropriate. And I just wanted to make that point. So thank you.
Thank you. Colleen, where are you? Oh, there you are.
Yes, President Davis and commissioners, just again, another just final thought as I listen, and this is somebody completely unassociated with all of these three, but I do, the map does clearly show where our two tracks are currently operating, and they overlap each other. And to Representative Walter's question regarding that, it's very easy to make agreements when you both benefit because you're overlapping. This has not been as I back look in the history, and I'm if you can talk to my other commissioners, I will dig and make sure I know all of what's happened and how things are happening, and I question and have really watched this. It's easy to see we have an outsider essentially, or a new entity far outside that circle. So it's a lot more challenging. People want to protect let's face it, their money, their profits. And if this is all it was about is the businesses, and that's how that was set up, I would completely understand that it's an open marketplace. But my understanding is this is for live horse racing. And it's the reason we hadn't seen live horse racing in the state is because of the expense. So how does this commission encourage that and encourage it statewide fairly? And again, I think it's easy to do it when you're neighboring tracks, or if this was Sheridan and Gillette, even though we're rivals, I'm sure, it would be easier to make those agreements. But how do we bring a new operator, a new person, a new entity who really has a passion for the live horse racing and help them become successful when it really doesn't benefit anybody else to really come to the table? It's not going to benefit anybody already making those profits in Campbell County to come to the table for somebody who wants to run a full slate, and I'm talking 16 races or the large number of races in our county. There's no incentive, there's no reason. And I understand the reason too. I've seen House Bill 125. I right away understood what that was for. Now, that was put in place for a reason, and we've really not had a lot of interest outside of looking at that because of the other two entities coming to those agreements. And again, they have very overlapping radiuses. It makes that discussion probably easier. So I'm just going to look at it very simplistically from what I see looking at this, and it's a difficult thing. I don't want to discount the other operators for what they've done. I just want us to understand, how do we make this marketplace fair for live horse racing? And I can see 307 not wanting to really jump out and do a whole lot of discussions because they're in a tough spot right now. They need the support. They need a financial way to make their entity work. What is the answer? I guess that's why I'm not on the gaming commission. You all have a tough decision, but I do see this from looking at the outside, what the true rub is and how we're stuck here. But it would be great to make this a little more simple going forward so we can encourage a few more of these live horse racing entities to come into our state. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the commissioners at this time? Oh, I see we have Mr. Michaeli. Go ahead.
I'll just be super brief. Tyler did call me out by name, so I want to just respond to that. I think what his comments emphasize is the importance of the Attorney General's opinion. So you have lawyers for the operators, for 307, for Wyoming Downs and Wyoming horse racing. The Attorney General is unbiased. He takes a look at this from your perspective, from the state of Wyoming's perspective, and I think is really the end all, that has the right decision and is what this commission should look at. So I just wanted to bring us back to that Attorney General opinion and Peter Michael and his well thought out legal analysis in there. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Are there any other commissioner questions? Hello, commissioners. Nobody has any more input then? Well, if there's no other input, oh, there's, well, that's only me that's blinking green up there. Is there any other buddy out there, Nick, in the sidelines?
No, sir, not that I see.
Okay. Well, at this time then, we can probably be looking for a motion here on this. Commissioners, what is your pleasure here?
President Davis?
Randy?
Is there a motion on the floor, or did we just have a motion to discuss it?
There was a motion for discussion, Randy, and now we're looking for a motion to, Charlie, could you properly frame this, what this motion needs to possibly be? We've got two alternatives here, is that correct?
Yes, you basically do. Thank you, President Davis. We have two options here. The first one would be initiate the rulemaking process. The second one would be to deny the petition in writing, stating reasons for the denial. So those are our two options, commissioners, at this point.
Okay. Does anybody have any more?
President Davis?
Yeah, go ahead, Randy.
Although we are not governed by Robert's Rules of Order, we should have a motion in the affirmative, and we can vote it down. So I would be willing to go ahead and make a motion to go ahead and accept the petition of 307 Horse Racing to have a rule change and initiate the process.
Okay, there is a motion on the floor. Oh, we have Mr. Kaler. Mike, you have a blue hand up. Where are you?
Mr. President, thank you. And I just want to point out that although we are not governed by Robert's rules, and typically this commission does make the motion in the affirmative, the statute, and I only have one screen here, so I can't pull it up. But essentially, the statute that we're here under today does require that if there is, I guess if the petition is denied, that you do need to include reasons therefore. And so that's difficult to do if you do a motion to approve and then the vote is ultimately a no. And so I would suggest under this circumstance that if there is a motion to deny, that there is a reason given, just to make sure that we comply with the Title 16.
Thank you, Mike. Randy, would you like to rescind that? And I could read you a motion.
That'd be fine. Yes,
Okay.
I'll rescind that one.
Okay. What I would like to see is a motion to deny on request for the following reason. The commission feels the current interpretation is accurate and the rule is consistent with Wyoming statute and agrees with the Attorney General's informal opinion dated on January 7th of 2015. Any deviation from the current practices would require a legislative change. Therefore, our 34-year practice is in accordance with the law, and we would deny the request. Is that what you would say, Randy?
I would make that motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Tom, and I would second it.
Thank you, Dick and Tom. All right. Charlie, we would like a roll call vote for this, please. We can't hear you.
That it's the ultimate deal, forgetting to unmute. Roll call vote. Commissioner Glick.
Mr. President, I'm going to abstain from vote, having not heard all of the explanations and testimony.
Okay, thank you, Danny.
Commissioner Daigle.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Barry.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Leinen.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Kura.
Aye.
Commissioner Pacheco.
Aye.
Commissioner Wildcat.
Aye.
Commissioner Broussard. You're
He's-
still muted, Troy.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. And Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, with that then, Charlie, I believe we are ready for a legislative update, if I'm not correct.
That is correct, sir.
All right. At this time, if we could get the senator on, the good senator. Where is she? Hello? Nick, did we lose our senator?
No, she's, Senator Ellis, you're still muted, I believe.
Senator Ellis, if you would like to give us a brief update on Senate File 56. Hello?
I've also asked her to unmute from here.
I think Troy's trying to unmute her from his walkie-talkie there.
There we go.
There we go.
Sorry, Commission. I took my own little personal break, so I'm happy to present. I stepped away for just a moment. Is that where we are on the agenda?
Yes, yes. If
Okay.
you'd like to give us an update of Senate File 56.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing me this time. I just kind of want to give you a brief update about the work that we've put into this bill. And if you look at its legislative history, you know, this was an interim topic for the Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources Committee.
One moment, please. Charlie, is this, we have a few people still on there? Does Nick have them out of the room, or do we take them out of the room?
I'm working on it.
Well, it really wouldn't matter either way, sir, but.
Okay, all right, then go ahead, thank you.
You bet. So initially, the bill was presented in a pretty small form and only made some changes to the session law that was adopted in 2020 March. But as we contemplated it, I think that there was a concern that about the longevity and kind of the permanent nature of the changes we made from the Pari-Mutuel Commission becoming the Gaming Commission. So a substitute bill was introduced, which more or less encompassed all of those elements that were passed in the session law, but would have made them permanent by finding a home for them in our green books or the statutes. So that was the first big change that you'll see, and the reason that there was a substitute bill. And then second, after we held our hearing, I listened to your commission meeting, and one of the applicants who was denied gave me a call and expressed some concern about the process that was engaged by the commission when reviewing applicants last year on those skill-based gaming machines. And after listening to the concern, I visited with their attorney and I asked the commission, I want to thank Director Moore for being very transparent. He informed me that the commission denied 6 applications and that there were 3 lawsuits pending. I was able to read some of those court filings, and it became very evident that the legislation we passed in March of last year did not provide the commission with the clarity I think that you deserve and that the applicants deserved. And so it really prompted a lot of intense work on what kind of due process these applicants should or shouldn't be afforded. And in reading the filings, you know, as I said, these are things that the legislature needs to make clear so that we can avoid these kind of this kind of confusion in the future. So one thing we did was initially we deleted some of the references to, there was a interest in adding the word manufacturer in there. And I think from a legislative standpoint, we need to do a little bit more research into what our reach and our ability is to regulate manufacturers. So we did make some changes to the definitions, however. Presently, your operator is kind of, I think, viewed as the person who has the machine or who's in charge of the machine. And the establishment was the owner of the business. But that was confusing because the way the statute that we passed last year was worded, the establishment was treated as a place, and we can't place liability on a place. So we modified the change, or modified the bill so that the owner is the owner of the establishment, and then inserted a new term of vendor, which is the person who's in charge of the machine. So as we go through the bill and as you look through the bill, you'll see that change, but it's the same concept of who you were regulating before, but got away from this concept of permitting an establishment as if it were a person, because it's not. And so walking through the bill, it's largely a codification of a lot of the work that we did in March of 2020. And I do want to point out a few areas where we did make some adjustments. As I mentioned, this bill, I probably haven't mentioned, this bill did pass out of the Senate. It will be heard before the House Appropriations Committee next week. There was a lot of concern and question about your ability to review lab reports, and I've been in touch with your Attorney General's office and with the Gaming Commissioner, Director. And I think it was the legislative intent that because Wyoming is new, the skill games are relatively new for the state, that we have a lot of expertise we need to start growing. And so we are going to rely heavily on the recommendation of those lab reports. And so one of the suggestions that I will offer to the House is, right now the statute presently requires that a lab submit a report directly to the commission. I would ask the House to remove that word directly, because it creates some confusion. In looking at our statutes, there's no other place where we're used directly in that way. And in understanding the purpose of having that language inserted, it was really the intent that a lab report wouldn't be tampered with or altered or be misleadingly submitted to the commission. So you'll see some language that we inserted later on that makes that more clear. We also made some changes about the taxes imposed. We don't change the level of the licensure fees or anything like that. But we did hear from some of the operators that they wanted the ability to prepay. So we put some language in there making it clear that they could do that. And then we also wanted to bolster your grounds for denial as you were looking at your applicants. And I think, in Wyoming, there is a great amount of concern about who is bringing these games in. And so in doing some research about how other states tackle their renewals and application review, they have automatic grounds for denying an applicant. And so if you go through the bill, we inserted some language that says if an applicant has been convicted of or forfeited bail or pleaded guilty to any of the following crimes, and we list them out: a crime involving theft, dishonesty or fraud, bribery or unlawfully influencing a public official, a crime involving physical harm to an individual, or any other crime identified by commission rules. And so I think that gives the public some assurance that we're not just looking at criminal backgrounds, but that we're also denying those applicants. In visiting with industry, I do think that the House might need to look at this language a little more closely. So I think, one concern that's been raised is the look back period. Some states only allow for a certain number of years, like a 10-year period of a look back, because you can imagine there might be an individual who made a stupid mistake and shoplifted an item in their early 20s as a college student. And now, 20 years down the road as an established business person, learn from that mistake. So we put the flexibility in there to only have that look back for 10 years for an automatic denial. I think that will afford your commission some ability, though, to look back further and make those determinations on a case-by-case basis. We also heard concerns about the crimes involving physical harm to an individual. And that was that language came about as a concern of, just kind of that muscle that comes behind, enforcing certain gaming issues. And so we wanted to limit that, though, to maybe a felony crime involving physical harm, because there might be a bar owner who has an assault charge for ejecting a patron or something like that. So we didn't want to preclude them from receiving a license. And then I think we want to tighten up that any other crime identified the commission to tie it back to the mission of what you're trying to do, which is anything that might adversely affect the credibility, security, integrity, or fairness of play of a skill-based game. So those are things that we would hope that the commission going forward, assuming that that language is adopted through an amendment, would discuss in your rulemaking. Other grounds for denial would include if the applicant concealed, failed to disclose, or otherwise tampered or attempted to mislead the commission with respect to any material fact contained in the application that's required to be submitted to the commission. And then another ground of denial would be if the applicant failed or refused to cooperate in the investigation of a crime relating to gambling, corruption of a public official, or any organized criminal activity. We also added some additional language, putting a new duty to disclose, which I think is similar to the rules that you've been working on and that you're developing. And so operators would have a continuing duty to disclose in writing any material changes in their applications, which include things like changes to their names and contact information, if they're arrested, convicted, or have any guilty pleas or disciplinary actions with licenses in Wyoming or other jurisdictions, as well as any civil actions brought against the operator and establishment. This is important because we don't necessarily think these need to be grounds for denial, but you might have a situation where an establishment or an operator is being sued in a civil capacity. It's not automatic grounds for denial. They just have a duty to let you know so you can determine whether or not the nature of that suit threatens the integrity of the game. And so, if it's a slip and fall case outside, it was icy and the business is sued, certainly I don't think that affects the integrity of play. But if they're being cited or getting citations for having minors in places where skilled games are, like a bar or restaurant that has adjoining space, that might be something the commission would want to take a closer look at. And then any other information required by commission rules that you want to be notified. And then we want to make sure, again, on that due process aspect, that the commission, if they're going to deny an application, if they intend to revoke or suspend a license or permit authorized under the article, that it has a duty to notify the applicant in writing, stating the grounds for the denial, revocation, or suspension, and then providing for some due process. And so you can ask for more information to up to 30 days to receive any additional documentation based on your concern. And then you'll have 20 days beyond that for a reconsideration. And so once you decide to deny an applicant for a permit or a license, then that case would be subjected to the requirements of the Wyoming Administrative Procedures Act. And we did hear from concerned folks, the $2,500 application fee in particular for the operators of the machines is a hefty one. And so, we want to make sure that we're affording those individuals due process as you're reviewing those applications. And so moving through the bill, you'll see more codification of, again, the statute, some conforming language, things like your law enforcement member who's on the commission, just clarifying that when they're doing their duties serving on the commission, that's covered under their scope of work and their existing jobs. Some other conforming amendments dealing with the release of criminal backgrounds. And then getting into definitions section, as I mentioned, we did change the definition of an operator. That will be the person who possesses and operates an establishment where a skill-based amusement game may be played for profit. So then we left the definition of establishment alone. As I mentioned, it was that's defined as a place. We inserted a new definition of skill, which means a player's knowledge, dexterity, or any other ability or expertise relevant to gameplay. And then we amended the definition of skill-based amusement game, making note that the element of skill has to be the primary factor in determining the outcome. The commission also asked for some clarification about claw kind of games like that you see in restaurants or arcade games that kick out tickets that children usually get and return for games or for small prizes. So we've inserted some clarifying language that skill-based amusement games do not include games played for prizes of nominal value as provided by the rule of commission. So we can let you further get into the details about those kind of arcade situations and claws that pull out stuffed animals and things like that. And then finally, the new definition of vendor means a person who owns and distributes a skill-based amusement game to an operator for profit. We wanted to also tighten up your ability to not only look at criminal history records, but that you shall access those for all operators and vendors. And then making some more conforming language throughout the bill. We had the last thing I did want to discuss with you are a few items. In section 3, we recognize that we're making some definition changes to skill-based amusement games. So we want to make clear that we're giving the commission and everyone who's permitted and licensed a 6-month window to make sure that they don't have to automatically pull the plug, that they can go get a new lab report, submit those to the commission, and have a little bit of time in between to make sure those games still meet the definition or still satisfy the new definition under Wyoming law. There's also a new provision in there where we're going to ask the commission to review the licenses or the applications you denied last year in May. Because we did have concern about the due process that was afforded to those applicants. And so you'll see in section 4, we wanted to add a grace period and making it clear that you can review any material that was submitted before June 1st. As we talked about just the extraordinary nature of last year with COVID, there were certainly circumstances across Wyoming where businesses were struggling. And so we did want to provide a little bit more grace in making sure that those businesses, if they had difficulty obtaining a lab report or getting the information that you were asking for, make it clear we want you to look at everything that they submitted before that time. And then finally, you'll see some renumbering and repealing of the session law, as well as an effective date to take immediate effect of the bill. So going forward, that's kind of a preview of the work that we've done so far. And I know that as Representative Walters has been on the call, he's got a few amendments he might like to discuss with you. But I just want to get you up to date that that's the work in the present form of the bill. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the commissioners? Wow, that sounds outstanding, huh?
Yeah, and I do think, as I've looked at the entire structure of, definitions of gambling in Wyoming, I do think we've got more work to do in the 2021 interim. But I think that this is a really good start. I think it gives the operators some assurance about the rules that they need to be engaged in. And I do have concerns about the due process. After I read the cases, it is a two-way street. When we write these laws, if we're not clear about the level of due process we want applicants to have, I've visited with Director Moore, and he's been, very accommodating and understanding our concerns. But that certainly, as you see issues or lawsuits or things of that nature where the legislature can provide that clarity, going forward this year, please know that I welcome knowing about those in advance. And if we can, work with your commission and listen to the public and do our jobs in kind of weighing some of those policy decisions, I certainly know we welcome that opportunity, and we've got a big year ahead of us.
Well, we thank you for that. That'll sure help us out on the commission also, because there's going to be some quagmires out there still.
I think so. And I fully anticipate that. I think this bill's a really good start, but I do think that there'll be more issues down the road until the dust settles on how these games are operating in Wyoming. But we do know a lot, and I want to thank, I see Senator Driscoll on the Zoom here. He's done a tremendous amount of work in bringing us that information. It's no small thing. Last year at this time, we had no idea how many games were in the state, how much revenue was passing through them, where they were, who was operating them, and we have a much, much better handle on that information because of people like Senator Driscoll, Representative Walters, and members of this commission. So thank you for that work. It's provided us an important baseline of information.
Well, we thank you for the update, and we look forward to working with you in the upcoming times.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Mr. President, this is Commissioner Pacheco.
Go ahead, Dwayne.
Yes, Senator, I did have a question for you. I read your email, and I was concerned about the last paragraph, which talked about people being worried about the commission being corrupt. And I wanted to know if you could address that statement, please. Further.
I want to be clear that when I came to this, I didn't have any preconceived notions. I've never participated in any of your meetings, but I do think that there is concern in the public because of the lab report element and the amount of discretion that the commission has to recognize the recommendations provided from one lab for one operator, but deny the same lab with the same recommendation for another. And so going forward, I think that, as the commission starts to develop more expertise and maybe has a better handle on things that they see in these skill-based technical reports that you disagree with, that we can discuss the opportunity for the commission to make rules saying, here's the checklist we're going to go through. And if a report happens to say, challenge, I think one of that had to do with the pool outcome, the finite pool outcome issue, that's all discussed and the rules are very clearly laid out. And so that the public knows when you are reviewing applications that you're going through that checklist for every single applicant. And so the concern that we've heard is that the somewhat lab reports that were all approved by the commission were accepted by the commission for some applicants and denied for other applicants.
I think some of that had to do with the timing and some other outstanding issues in some of those things too.
Yeah, I've read these cases a few times. And so that's our goal, is to hopefully put some of this litigation behind the commission so we can focus on the big questions that are on the horizon. I think that industry is very interested in having a conversation about how we expand the number of games, but I do know that the legislature, there are members who are concerned about just opening it up broadly. And so we've got a lot of things on the horizon that we'll need to sort through as well. And, I think that the conversation's ongoing. So hopefully we can get these cases addressed and make our legislative intent much, much clearer. Because like I said, this isn't trying to point fingers. When I read those cases, it's, and you read what we passed in session law, we could have provided greater clarity. And so that's what this is attempting to do.
So will there be an expansion from this bill?
No, that's not the intent of the legislature. And I know that's been a question raised by the Attorney General, Kaler, who's, been advising you. In looking at the language on page 2 of the bill, that's where you see the qualifying language about a skill-based amusement game operating in the state of Wyoming in accordance with the provisions of the 2020 session law. I've been in touch with our LSO, and we may offer an amendment to make that even more clear by stating that those skill-based games that were operating in the state prior to March 17th, 2020, so that limit is known. And then as we move into this next phase of discussing where these games and how much more we want or don't want, we can remove that language. But for now, this is not being, and that's my understanding in visiting with everyone who's been working on this issue for much longer than I have, is that that wasn't the intention to expand it beyond who was already approved last year and who applied last year.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Are there any other questions for the good senator? How about the bad senator on the dark side there?
Yeah, I was kind of feeling hurt about that, not being the good senator anymore. I see how you guys act once I'm moved away, but no, I don't have any real comments. We'll kind of watch the bill as it goes through, and kind of interesting to watch everything evolve. So I appreciate all you guys have done and the efforts you've made. I think you've done good work, and I thank you all.
Thank you, Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman?
Hey. Yes, go ahead.
I want to be clear that I came working on this bill with no preconceived notions about levels of corruption or anything like that. But I think, anytime we're talking about gaming, I think it just really has a lot of people concerned. And so, our challenge is to make sure that the public has the utmost faith and confidence that everything's being administered fairly and equally. And, when I visit with folks who share that concern, that's been what I've expressed, that if we don't do our job as legislators in providing you with that right framework, we're not helping you in achieving that goal and maintaining that public confidence. So please know, I didn't intend for that to be certainly a personal attack. That is something that has been hinted at and discussed on that lab report component. So I thought providing some clarity on that issue would hopefully rest some of those concerns. And I just want to make my intention and my beliefs very clear with the commissioners.
Okay, I agree with you. And there's nothing, we were tasked with quite the job last year, and not a lot of sideboards on how to get it done. And I think the commission themselves did an outstanding job last year with what we had to work with.
Well, and President Davis, to be clear for people listening and watching, we were playing catch up, and we still are. And so I think, again, this is going to be a pivotal year for us to really lay some of that foundation and look at additional issues that need to be addressed. And once we've got that in place, then I think it'll be appropriate to have more discussion about expansion of games, and bringing in stakeholders and having that more robust conversation. So please know, like I said, last year we had no idea how many games were in Wyoming, where they were, what was going on, and we have a much better handle on that information because of the work of this commission. So thank you for that.
Yep, it's going to be a great future. Looking forward. Thank you very much.
Mr. President.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Pacheco again for Senator. I appreciate those comments. Also, that if you look at the work that we have done this past year with our mission, vision, value statement, and also if you could consider moving forward just the number of law enforcement, of investigators that are allotted to the commission. Trusting but verifying is part of making sure that we are getting what's appropriate through the legislation, and that the state is getting the value out of what we're trying to do. And so if we could consider that in your legislation as well, I think that's a big part of it.
Well, and thank you, Commissioner Pacheco, Mr. President. I want to also add that was kind of came up in the Senate. You'll recall that the session law had an allocation of the funds that were generated off that 20% collection to go toward the commission and then also the state, or excuse me, to counties and the school foundation program. And right now we have a current 10% allocation, and that did change because we wanted to make sure we were keeping the commission, getting it to that, threshold of operating. And so some senators have asked, is that the appropriate level? And I at this time would urge folks to leave it at 10% because the Gaming Commission is self-funded. I think that's a really important aspect of what this bill provided. And I think that as the industry matures, it will be helpful for us to see what kind of law enforcement and other investigative services that you need, and kind of hanging on to that carve out so that you have the resources that are, again, self-funded through your own commission and your own industry to provide for that assurance. So that'll be an issue that I am, in the Senate side, I think there was a question, is 10% too much or is it not enough? Actually, it was more, is it too much? And I said, I think it needs to stay at least at 10% until we know just what the needs are so that you can do that very thing. So for now, hopefully the House members will keep it at 10% so that we have that placeholder.
Okay, very good. Are there any other questions? Well, we thank you very much, and you can just chime in anytime at any of our meetings. That way you can stay updated.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have been listening and learning a lot, and just thank you for welcoming me to be part of your discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. Charlie, is there anything else that we have here?
No, I think we're close to being complete. One thing just to touch on, we did get approved for the B11 to have additional staffing through the AWAC mechanism. So we are working on getting additional staffing here to help us. I do approach those things very conservatively. So, we're going to see how the next few weeks go before we start employing a lot of people, but we're getting the positions posted. The first position should post as early as next week, I'm hoping. So that's going to be very helpful for all of us here. Other than that, one of the things, and I do agree, Senator, I think we should leave the 10% the way it is right now. We haven't touched that at this point. Again, with a conservative approach, we've left that just sit there for the time being. But I do think it does need to stay at the 10%. And then anything that we do roll into to our 49 fund, which is our administrative fund, does roll over ultimately if it goes above. So the state will be getting additional funds if that does roll over. So, and at any point, if you'd like to kind of get with me, I can explain some of those mechanisms, how those different rollovers do work, and how much get that stuff delineated to you. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
Okay, well, then I guess, Charlie, we are not going to have an executive session. And I would say, yes,
President Dave,
Randy.
I just one comment. Sure good to see Danny Glick on this call, and I want to say to him, it's been a pleasure serving with him for these past 7 years. So I really appreciate your participation, and you'll be missed.
Mr. President, this is Danny. And this has been an absolute joy. It was kind of outside of the realm of where I've ever operated before. I got a little bit of cowboy in my background, and I've got an absolute love for horses and live horse racing. And to see this group go on and promote that is near and dear to my heart. And I wish you all well. Like's been referred to, you've got some tough decisions coming down the road, but in working with you, even if it's remotely, I know you're very, very capable, and I wish you good luck. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other things, Charlie, that we have on our to-do list?
That's catches us up, and thank you very much. And I appreciate the relationship, Danny, with you and all the hard work that you've put in over the years with everybody. So thank you.
And I'll have you guys know, Charlie did buy donuts again today, so you did miss out on the donuts. Thank you, guys. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.